Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank all of you, especially all of our guest panelists, for attending this webinar. Before we get started, I want to say a few words about the Gift of Learning. For those of you who are new, the Gift of Learning is an organization that's dedicated towards closing the educational gap between the privileged students and the low-income minority students. If you're interested in becoming a tutor for our organization, visit our website or Instagram, which is at the Gift of Learning. Our team is made up of our 4 founders. I am Arya Nalavade, and I'm the executive director. Shivangi Gosayan is our director of assignments. Amrita Rajiv is our director of education, and Isha Kulkarni is our director of communication. Aside from that, now I'd love to introduce you to our guest panelists for today. All of our guest panelists, could you all introduce yourselves and tell us what grade and college you'll be going to, as well as what you are planning to study? So Radha, if you could you start us off?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Radha Patel, and I'll be a first year at the University of Virginia next year, and I'm studying engineering, but I'm an undecided engineering major.
Anushka, can you go ahead? Anushka, you might be on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so hi, I'm Anushka Phadke. I'll be a freshman at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I'll be studying biomedical engineering.
Great. And Nandini?
Nandini, and I'm going to be a freshman at The Ohio State University, and I'm majoring in neuroscience.
And lastly, but not least, Parita.
Hi, I'm Parita, and I'm going to be a sophomore at Virginia Tech, and I'm going to be studying biology on the pre-med track.
Great. So those are our 4 panelists, and we're so glad that all of you can make it today. So now that we've gotten the introductions out of the way, let's get right into it. So the first kind of section we're going to be talking about is the Common App / the applying process. So this is kind of going to be a general questions. Throughout this, we're going to have some specific questions towards one panelist, and others are going to be answered by all the panelists. So our first question is going to be answered by all of our panelists. So how many colleges did you guys all apply to, and how many out of those were safety, target, and reach schools? So Radha, can you go ahead? We'll just keep the same order as the introductions were in.
I think I don't remember exactly. I applied to a lot of schools. I think it was around 10, but I think an equal amount of target schools, safety schools, and reach schools I applied to. Yeah, do you need me to list specifically?
Just we wanted kind of an average number for each.
Yeah, so I think around 3 of each colleges I applied to.
Yeah, that's good. And Anushka?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I think I had like 8, I'm pretty sure. I think 2 were safety, and I think 3 and like 2 reach.
Mm-hmm. And Nandini?
Like 11. I can't remember like the number of targets, but I know I had 2 safety schools and I had 3 reach.
Okay, yeah. And Parita?
Yeah, I think I also applied to around 8 schools, and I had 2 safeties, and I think I had a split amount of target and reach schools.
Okay, yeah, so that all sounds good. Now let's kind of get into the applying deadlines almost. So we're aware that there's early decision, early action, and regular decision. So can you explain what is kind of the difference between each of these, Anushka?
Yeah, okay, so early decision is basically binding. All it means that you will get like an early response from the colleges, but if you get in, that means you have to commit to that college. Early action is kind of similar. It's not binding, so if you get accepted, you still have like a couple like months to decide if you want to commit to the college or not, and you also get your response early. And regular decision is like the regular process basically, so you would get your decision by April 1st, which is later than like the early decision or early action.
Yeah, that's great. So those are kind of the 3 main decision deadlines. So Parita, can you go bit more into like why would we apply to one or the other? Like what are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, so early decision, basically, if you have a school in mind that is your reach school and you know that if you got in, you definitely would go there. A lot of schools that offer early decision tend to have a higher acceptance rate for people who apply early decision. So there might be a higher chance that you get in if you apply early decision. But like Anushka said, if you get in, you have to go and it's a binding contract. And then for early action, I found it better to apply to a lot of my schools early action because it was just an easier way for me to get through apps quicker. Also because I found that later during November, December, January time, I had a lot more schoolwork to do and it got harder to balance college apps with schoolwork. So it was easier for me to get them through before. But if you are applying early action, you definitely need to start brainstorming and working on your essays over the summer and definitely like September, October.
Yeah, that was really informational because with like all the deadlines, it's kind of confusing, like which one should you apply to?
Yeah.
So that aside, Nandini, could you kind of briefly walk us through like what the application process is? Like what all do you need to really submit? Like example, teacher recommendations, test scores. Can you just briefly go over that?
So first you have to get your test scores done. And if you ask me, I think that's probably the first thing that you should do. Just get your testing out of the way, done. You could hypothetically like do them this summer before your senior year, but I did that and it really set me back in terms of like my timeline for essay writing. So that brings me to the next part. So then you have to write your essays after you get all your testing, all that done. And then while you're writing your essays, you should be, reaching out to your teachers at the same time. I think by the time you're in your junior year, maybe like mid-junior year or at around that point, you should have a decent idea of who you want to ask for recommendations. So reach out to them as early as possible so that you give them enough time to write their recommendations, because if you ask them the last minute, they're not going to write it for you. They will tell you straight to your face, I'm not going to write it for you. So make sure you do that on time. Yeah, it's just the three main things. Write your essays, plan them out properly, get your recommendations well before your deadline for the application, and get your test scores done as early as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And so Parita, can you go into like a bit more into detail? Like who should you get your teacher recommendations from? Like, can it be from any grade, any subject? I know this obviously varies from college to college, but like in general, who do you recommend getting them from? Parita? I think, are you on mute, Parita? Okay, well, Radha, could you answer this question? I hate to put you on the spot, but I think Preeta might not have heard me. But Radha, could you?
Sorry, I just got, I think something happened. I just left the meeting for some reason. Can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, for sure. So Nandini kind of explained like what teacher recommendations are and when you should get them. So could you kind of briefly explain who you should get them from? Like which grade or which subject?
Yeah, so I think the best way to go about teacher recommendations is just whatever teacher you have a really strong relationship with. And it's not just, you definitely want it to be in a class that you're doing well in, but it should also be a class where you genuinely are interested about the subject and you are often talking to that teacher. Also, I think once you figure out what colleges you're applying to and when you're applying, so for example, early decision, early action, regular decision, you want to give your teachers at least a month to work on your recommendations, because you're probably not going to be the only person that asks them, and they need a good enough time to be able to, write it, edit it, and like go through it. So I say at least a month before the deadline, and make sure you give them the deadline because it's not the same for every college.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're on like the teacher recommendation topic, could you explain a little bit about what FERPA is? Because not a lot of people have heard about it, but it's kind of a confusing topic.
Yeah, so FERPA is basically when your teacher finishes your recommendation and they put it on Common App or Coalition App, it's basically you giving away your right to look at that recommendation. And it's not that big of a deal, but honestly, it's just a good thing to do because your colleges that you're applying to will know that it's more honest, because otherwise your teacher might be writing with a different scope if they know you're going to be reading it. So if you give away that right, your teachers will definitely know that they can be more honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now we're kind of gonna make our way towards the Common App essay, which Nandini mentioned earlier. So this one's for Radha. What are some good tips to write your essay about, and which topics should you stay away from?
I think something that I think any topic could be good if you write it the right way. So some people write about really abstract things, but they craft it in a way that like relates to something they're passionate about, or their cultural identity, or like their intellect. And so like I wrote mine about dancing, but I like tied it into like my analytical thinking process. And I think anything that like that's unique to you, an experience that no one else would have, but could really like showcase a part of your personality or like who you are, would be really good to write about. But like something to stay away from, I would recommend not writing about like something super cliche that like everybody goes through, like a sports injury or something like that, or some really sensitive topics. You don't know who's reading your essay, so it might be best to stay away from that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of the Common App essay, but we also have supplementals along with that. So Nandini, can you explain like what are supplementals for those of you that aren't aware of supplementals?
Supplementals are basically what specific colleges that you're applying to will ask for in addition to your Common App, Coalition App essay. Not every college requires them, but it's highly recommended. It basically means that you should do it. It increases your chances of getting in. And they're not as long. Your Common App is usually like 650 words, and the supplementals like cut that in half. So it's a lot shorter, but that makes it, in my opinion, a lot harder to write. So they'll give you, I remember for UVA, one of my topics was like, think about like an interest that you had and like, why does it make you a better, well-rounded person? Or I can't remember the exact topic, but it's usually like something like that. They'll ask you about specific aspects of your personality and how you think that'll help you at the school that you're applying to. It's usually just school-specific questions.
Makes sense, yeah. And so this is kind of a general question. So did any of you use a paid service to get your essays revised, or did you show your essays to a teacher? I guess, Radha, you could start, and then we'll go in the same order as previously mentioned.
I didn't use any paid services, but I showed it to my English teacher, my AP Lang teacher who I had in 11th grade, and it was really helpful, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Anushka, can you go next?
Yeah, I also showed my essays to my English teacher. I didn't use a paid service.
Okay. And Nandini?
I did use the paid service, but now that I like look back on it, I'm not sure that it was 100% helpful, because every single time I wrote my essays, there wasn't like much advice that he would give me. So I used to talk to my AP Lit teacher in 12th grade too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, because like a lot of people went to paid services and they didn't really feel that satisfied, but a good English teacher is always helpful. So the next question is for Anushka, but the rest of you can also add something. So do you have any advice or tips in general for writing the Common App essay or supplementals, or anything you wish you knew before?
So just some like advice on like writing essays for like Common App. I wouldn't recommend like listing all your achievements in your essay. I think what colleges would want to see is how did you get to those achievements, or more like it should be kind of like a story. You don't want to just list everything you have and well achievements in that matter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay, yeah, we could just move on from that. And this is kind of common, like not common app essay related, but like application related. So I know many students do internships or research opportunities and put that on their college application. Did any of you do internships or research opportunities? And if so, could you please describe them and tell us how you found these opportunities? So Radha, you could go ahead first.
I didn't do any internships or research opportunities. Instead, I did volunteering. So I think like finding opportunities in anything that you're interested in would really help, or like anything that you want to major in, start looking for opportunities to volunteer or intern in those places. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Anushka, could you go ahead?
Yeah, I also didn't do any internships or research opportunities. As Radha said, I also did lots of volunteering and extracurriculars like clubs in schools and everything.
Nandini?
Do any research opportunities? Well, I applied, but I didn't get any. But I did have one unpaid internship at, there was like a music therapy service, and I was interning there so that like I could find like the relationship between like music and the brain, because I'm studying neuroscience and I want to be a neurologist. But I did do a lot of volunteering as well, just like Radha and Anushka, and I seriously recommend like looking for internships and research opportunities, because that when I look back, I kind of wish that I did them. I did more of them, because it really gives you an upper leg in the application process, because when colleges are looking at it, it kind of sets you apart, and it shows that you're already prepared for the kind of research that you do when you actually get to college. So.
And you kind of mentioned that you applied for one. So where would you say you could look for these research opportunities? Like through school, or like how did you find the one that you applied for?
I just got a little lucky, because I found out from a family friend. So if you have connections like that, like to NIH or something like that, if you're looking for medicine, then take full advantage of them. And if not, there are tons of resources on the internet. Like I'm on the pre-med track, so if you want to look for like medical internships, Johns Hopkins has like an entire website full of like a list of internships and research opportunities there. So.
And Parita, did you do any? Parita? Okay, that's fine. So Anushka, so the next question's for you. Or sorry, no. So next we'll go into some standardized testing related questions. So I don't believe Parita's on the call right now. Parita, can you hear me?
Happening. I keep getting like kicked out of the meeting. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Well, it's good that you're back. So we're kind of doing the standardized testing and GPA/IB classes portion now. So how important of a role do you think that the SAT score or your GPA plays in the college application process? Would you say like it's the most important part, least important part, or somewhere in between?
I'd say GPA is definitely really, really important, and definitely something to focus on going into senior year. Don't just, I feel like I heard a lot of people saying it's senior year, grades don't matter, but they definitely do, especially first semester. SAT, I think a lot of colleges keep in mind that it's just one, Saturday in the afternoon. And so your entire college career isn't going to be based on your SAT score. So they definitely take in mind that it's not, the definition of your entire high school career, because that's what your GPA is, and it's way more of a better representation of your standing. So definitely, put in work for your SAT and study. But if it's not as great as you think it should be, just focus on your GPA. That you should be fine.
Yeah, that's really nice. So this is kind of a general question to everyone. What did you guys use to prepare for the SAT/ACT? So Radha, could you go first?
So I took my first SAT at the beginning of my junior year, and the summer before that, I did like a 10-week program. It was like a local tutoring service, I think. I did that program for the summer leading up to that, and it really helped. But honestly, any practice would help as long as you're doing it consistently.
Mm-hmm. Anushka?
So I went to this place called My Exams Prep. I took SAT classes there for a while, and they also offered a bunch of practice tests. So those were really helpful. I do highly recommend a lot of practice tests.
Mm-hmm. And Nandini?
I didn't do like serious prep until after my first time of taking both the SAT and ACT. So like I took it once just to like get a feel of what it was actually like. And then after that, I went to prep at C2 for the SAT. I took like I think it was 4 weeks of prep before I took it in August of 2019. And then for the ACT, I went to Prime Learning, and that was for 4 weeks too, before I took it in July.
Mm-hmm. And Parita?
I didn't do like a class or a service or anything. I just got a lot of SAT prep books and I used Khan Academy because I just found it easy to, SAT prep books were really good for practice and so was Khan Academy. But if I was ever struggling with certain issues for whatever subject, I could just watch a video on it and just do practice problems for that specific area. And I thought it was really helpful to kind of work on that one skill to like help me, get to the level that I needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Radha, so do you have any advice or tips for students who are taking the SAT or ACT this year?
Like Anushka said, I would recommend practicing a ton. Like I think I took like 20 practice tests in total before I actually took the SAT. But I think another thing that's really helpful is really like familiarizing yourself with the test and like the format of it so that you like aren't confused at all. Like for example, knowing that like on the SAT, the reading passage goes in order, like lines up with the questions, like that is a really easy thing to mess up. And I think it's really helpful to like know the test in and out before you take it.
Mm-hmm, of course. And so kind of going towards like AP testing and IB testing. So Anushka, obviously you took AP and IB classes. So how many AP and IB classes would you recommend taking throughout your entire high school year?
So throughout my entire, high school, I would recommend around like 7 to 8, but definitely like spread them out over years. You don't want 7 or 8 in a whole year.
Of course, yeah. And Nandini, like more on AP/IBs, are there any specific AP/IB classes that colleges like or like prefer that you take?
I don't know that there are certain APs that they prefer. I think it just depends on, what you're interested in. So if you're like applying to like a STEM-based school, they probably want to see good scores in AP Physics, AP Calc. But I do know that I took AP Spanish, and before I took it, my Spanish 4 teacher told me that students that take APs in world languages do have higher chances of getting admitted to colleges. So there is that. And I guess if you take APs that are notoriously harder and then you do well on them, like AP Calc BC is really hard. All of the AP sciences are pretty difficult too. So if you take those classes, you do well in the class and you do well in the exam too, then that probably gives you an upper leg in admissions.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads into my next question. So this is a general question. What were some of the hardest AP/IB classes that you took? And do you have any advice or personal tips regarding how to be successful in these classes? So Radha, could you go first?
I also think definitely that my hardest APs were in the science. Like I think AP Chem was really hard and AP Physics. Those were probably my hardest 2 APs. But I think something that really helped me was like going after school and asking my teacher questions, just like getting help outside of class if you don't understand something. It's really important to like make sure you know the material and like keep up with the class because they're really fast paced too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anushka?
The hardest AP classes I took were BC Calc and AP Chem. Um, some tips I would recommend, definitely keeping up with your class, as Radha said. You don't want to fall behind on these. And also, if you need like extra help, Khan Academy, they have like really good AP videos for like each subject. Those are really good.
Mhm. And Nandini?
Like Radha, I really struggled with AP Chem. Um, they've said it already, but you need to like keep up with your classes and you can't fall behind because they are college level courses and they're incredibly fast paced. And I think you should definitely reach out to your teachers for help if you don't understand what's going on, because that's what they are there for. And I kind of regret not taking advantage of that when I was in my junior year of high school in AP Chem. So yeah.
Mhm. This next question is for Radha. So regarding AP or IB scores, do you have to submit all of your scores to your college, or can you pick specific ones? Like suppose you did really bad in one exam. Do you have to send that one?
No, you don't have to send all your scores to colleges. But unless you failed the exam, I would recommend sending it because if you don't send it, they might assume you failed it when you really just got a 3 and you don't want to send it. But I think send all the ones that are really important to the field you're interested in. Like definitely send all like the science ones if you're interested in like a pre-health major. I think that's really important. But no, you don't have to send all of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Parita, so since you're already in college, did any of the IB classes that you took in high school help you with your college classes?
Yeah, so I'm on the pre-med track, and freshman year, most people and definitely all bio majors have to take 2 semesters of freshman bio. And the entire time I just felt like I was coasting because I took IB Bio HL in high school. It's a 2-year class, so junior year and senior year. And like the entire time in college, I felt like I already knew everything and I was definitely way less stressed. And a lot of my friends, I could help them, and there were definitely topics that I needed to study because they weren't covered in high school, but I never felt extremely stressed or I had a lot of anxiety. And I also took IB Literature HL in high school, which is also a 2-year class, and it helped me get the credit I need so I don't have to take any college English at all. So that's really nice.
Yeah, so that's like a really big incentive to take more AP.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we're kind of coming close to a wrap up, is there any advice you wish you knew as a rising junior or a senior? So this is a general question. So Radha, could you go ahead?
I think it's really important to seek help. Like, don't be afraid to ask your teacher for any help. I know in like junior year, I was really scared to ask my English teacher for help because he was really intimidating. But I think it's really important to make sure you're keeping up with everything. And also, like, I think another thing that's really important is time management because especially as like college apps come around, like you have to balance school and college apps, which can be a lot. So I think it's important to like manage your time really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anushka, could you go ahead?
Yeah, so something I would really recommend is like, well, starting your essays or at least brainstorming them well before, I would say in the summer after junior year, because you also need to focus on your grades during like senior year, especially that first semester there, because if you're applying early, then you really need to have those essays like revised also by all your teachers, well, not all, your English teacher or like anyone else. So, yeah.
And Nandini?
I second pretty much everything that Radha and Anushka said, but I'd also like to add that um, if everyone in your friend group is taking an AP class or taking a super hard class, that doesn't mean that you have to take it too. I made that mistake my junior year of high school, and it did not end well. So I just take, if you're going to take an AP class, just take it in something that you're interested in and that you know you're good at, so that it doesn't affect your GPA negatively. And another thing that I'd say is, this might not be for everyone, but if you're interested in applying to like an Ivy League school, make sure you know that before you're coming into high school, because if you want to get into that school, you have to be prepping all 4 years of high school. And I realized that really late, and I wanted to go there, but I didn't like prep my resume in such a way that would stand out to that school. So yeah, just make sure that you're on your toes for all 4 years of high school if you want to seriously apply to an Ivy League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Parita?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with what everyone said. Also, I think another thing is that colleges definitely want to see that you've been keeping up with not just schoolwork and everything else that you're doing, but also your volunteering and your any kind of clubs that you're in. So if you've been in a club for, like the first 3 years of college, try looking into leadership of that club, because colleges love to see leadership qualities. And especially if you're going to be talking about what a great leader you are in your essay or whatever it is, they definitely want to see how this club has helped you want to be a leader and want to help other people have the same journey that you did.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for all attending. All of this information has been so helpful. And yeah, I just want to thank you once more just for attending this session. And yeah, so I think we'll wrap up here. And since we're at the time limit too, so thank you all for coming. I think we'll stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just end the meeting now. Thank you all for coming. And thank you so much to our guest speakers.